first time I told someone I might be gay, I was 17. I didn't say it out loud. I wrote it in a note and stuck it under my bed, where no one would ever find it. I think I just needed it to exist somewhere outside my head. That note stayed hidden for months, until the day we moved, and my mom found it. She didn't say a word about it, just placed it on my desk. One evening, like it was homework, I forgot to turn in. She didn't ask, didn't accuse. She just looked at me, her lips pressed tight, and walked away. That silence haunted me more than any screaming ever could. We'd moved to this small town in Idaho after my dad got transferred. Fresh start, he said. Better schools. Cleaner air. I think what he really meant was a place where no one knew what we were running from. I was the new kid junior year, which is pretty much the worst possible time to be new. People already had their friend groups, their routines, their invisible walls. I slipped through the cracks like water. I didn't mind at first. Being invisible meant no one was asking questions. And after the note, I had a lot I didn't want to explain. That changed the day I met James. He was in my chemistry class, which I was already failing. He slid into the seat next to me like he belonged there, even though that wasn't his assigned spot. He glanced at my notebook, then at the mess of formulas on the board, and said, "You look like you're trying to translate alien code." I laughed, caught off guard. I think aliens would be easier. He smiled, not the kind of smile people practice in mirrors, the kind that slips out before they can stop it. "I'm James," he said, sticking out his hand. "Eli." He didn't let go right away. And when he finally did, I missed the warmth more than I wanted to admit. After that, he kept sitting beside me. Every class. Even when the teacher corrected him, he'd just smile and say, "Sorry, I'm helping him. He's chemically unstable." She gave up after 2 weeks. It took me longer to admit I liked having him around. I'd laugh more, talk more, listen more, and slowly, the walls I'd built started to crack. One day after class, he nudged me and said, "You ever hang out with people after school, or is that against your religion?" "I'm not religious." "Cool. Then you have no excuse. Come to my place." I hesitated. He grinned. "I have pizza and Mario Kart." The pizza was cold and the game was rigged, but I didn't care. His room smelled like sandalwood and dust, and his walls were covered in old vinyl records and faded Polaroids. One of them showed a younger James with what looked like his older brother. They were both laughing. Real, unfiltered joy. He caught me looking and said, "That's Ryan. He's in college now." "Do you miss him?" He nodded. "Yeah, he was the only one who really got me." That word stuck with me. Got me because I didn't feel like anyone got me. Not here. Not before. Not even myself. James paused the game after I lost my 5th round and turned toward me. "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" I stiffened. "Depends." He was quiet for a moment. "Then are you okay?" I blinked. "Yeah." "Why?" "You smile a lot, but your eyes always look like they're somewhere else." I swallowed hard. "I'm fine," I said too fast. He nodded slowly. "Okay." He didn't push, which somehow made it worse. When I got home that night, I stared at the ceiling for hours. Why did it hurt more to be seen than ignored? The next few weeks blurred. More classes, more jokes, more games. We fell into a rhythm. I never told him anything real, but somehow he still made me feel real, present. I started drawing again. Just little things. Sketches in the margins of my notebook. I drew him once from memory, the way he looked when he wasn't performing. Quiet, thoughtful, like he was searching for something he wasn't sure existed. Then, one Thursday afternoon, everything changed. It was raining. I hadn't brought a jacket. And by the time I reached the school steps, I was soaked. James ran up beside me, his hoodie dripping, holding a binder over his head, like it would do anything. He looked at me, grinning, and said, "God's crying because I beat you in the chem tests." I laughed. "You got a 96. I got a 72. Still counts." He reached out and pushed my wet hair from my face, and then froze. Our eyes met. The rain stopped mattering. The noise faded. He let his hand fall and stepped back. "Sorry," he said quickly. "That was—" "It's okay," I said. But it wasn't. Not really. Not for me. Because for the first time in a long time, I wanted something. Not abstractly. Not hypothetically. I wanted him. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the moment in my head, wondering if he'd meant anything by it, or if I was just projecting. Again, I thought about the way his eyes lingered, the way his hand shook when he pulled back, the way he didn't look at me the rest of the day. The next morning, I left for school early, too early, and I walked a long way, past the park, down the empty side streets, anything to kill time and silence the noise in my chest. When I got there, James wasn't in class, or the next one, or lunch. I texted him once, just a simple, "Hey, you okay?" No response. By sixth period, I was spiraling. Did I scare him off? Did I ruin the one thing that made this place bearable? I barely heard the teacher call my name. After school, I waited by his locker. 10 minutes. Then 20. Then I turned to leave, and there he was. Hair mess. Eyes tired. But there. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He looked around and leaned in, voice low. "Can we talk?" "Somewhere else." I nodded. We ended up behind the gym, where no one ever went after hours. The rain had started again, soft and steady like background noise. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I need to ask you something." I waited. "When I touched your face yesterday—" He paused. "Did you want me to?" The question knocked the air from my lungs. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say always. Instead, I said, "I didn't hate it." He let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. Then he said it. "I think I might like guys." My heart stopped. "I don't know what that means yet," he continued. "I've never said it out loud. I've thought about it. A lot. But I was scared." "Why now?" He looked at me. "Because you make it feel less scary." We stood there for a long time. Not touching. Not speaking. Just existing in the same moment. And then he said, "If you ever want to talk about it, or not talk, but just be, I'm here." I didn't say anything. I just reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. And maybe that was enough. For now. Maybe the first step isn't shouting your truth. Maybe it's just holding someone's hand in the rain and letting them hold yours back. And hey, if you made it this far, maybe this story feels familiar. Maybe you've been there. Or maybe you're still figuring things out. Either way, you're not alone. And there's more to this story than just a coming out. Because coming out is just the beginning. We didn't talk about the moment behind the gym. Not that day. Not the next. James still sat beside me in chemistry. Still made dumb jokes. Still poked my ribs when I got too quiet. But something between us had shifted. There was a new energy now. Electric, unspoken, and terrifying. And addictive. At lunch, he brushed his knee against mine under the table. Accidentally, maybe, or maybe not. I didn't move. After school, we walked slower. Took the long way. Found reasons to linger outside until our shadows got swallowed by streetlights. Still, we didn't say anything. It was like we were both too afraid to break the silence, in case the truth made things collapse. But of course, silence doesn't last. Someone always hears the quiet. It started with a glance. We were in the library, pretending to study. James was doodling stars in the corner of my notebook, his fingers resting too close to mine. Neither of us had noticed the guy across the table. Tyson, wide shoulders, varsity jacket, reputation for running his mouth faster than his brain. He stared. I felt it before I saw it. When I looked up, he quickly looked away, but not fast enough. James noticed too. His hand snapped back like he touched fire. That night, I got a text. "James, he saw us." I replied instantly. "Me, we didn't do anything." "James, doesn't matter." He didn't reply after that. The next day, he wasn't at school. Again, I didn't panic. Not yet, but by third period, my stomach was in knots. By lunch, people were whispering. Not loud, not direct, but enough. Little comments like, "Did you see who James hangs out with now?" I heard something weird. Did you notice the way they sit together? And the worst one, I mean, he never dated a girl, has he? It was a slow leak, not a flood. But even a drip can drown you if it doesn't stop. I found James outside after school, by the field where no one was around. His hood was up, hands jammed in his pockets, jaw tight. "Hey," I said. He didn't look at me. "They're talking." "I know. I didn't think it'd feel like this." "Like what?" He hesitated. "Like I'm not safe." I stood next to him, close but not too close. "You are. With me." He let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, that's not enough if the rest of the world's sharpening knives." I didn't know what to say. I'd spent most of my life trying not to be noticed. He'd spent most of his being noticed, and now that the attention shifted, it was like the ground tilted under him. He turned to me suddenly. "Do you regret it?" "What?" "That night. What I said. Us." "No," I said quickly. "Do you?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the field, where kids were packing up football gear, laughing like nothing had ever gone wrong in their lives. "I feel like I stepped off a cliff," he said. I looked at him. "You did," I said quietly. "But I did too." He finally looked at me, and for a second I thought he'd kiss me. But he didn't. He stepped back. "I need to think." "About us." "About everything." Then he walked away, and I let him, because I knew that if I followed, I'd say something desperate. Something like, "Don't go." Something like, "I've never felt this before." Something like, "Please don't make me go back to pretending again." But I said nothing, and the silence was louder than any scream. That night, I found myself standing in the kitchen, staring at the fridge. That old picture of Aiden, James's brother, still pinned by a souvenir magnet, his smile frozen in time. The one James had used to get him. I wondered if Aiden would understand this, too. If he'd sit us down, laugh at our panic, and say, "Guys, you're allowed to be who you are." But Aiden wasn't here. He was off at college, doing God knows what, and James was somewhere I couldn't reach. I opened my phone, typed out a message. "Me, I don't need you to say anything. Just, I miss you." I stared at it for 10 minutes, then deleted it, and turned off my phone. The next day at school, James was back, but not beside me. He took a different seat in chemistry, across the room. Didn't even glance my way. I felt it like a punch. Worse than any insult, because he wasn't being cruel. Just distant, like I was a chapter he regretted writing. I kept my head down the entire class. At lunch, I sat alone. People noticed, whispered again. I could hear it in the way conversations dropped when I walked by. I checked my phone. Nothing, until sixth period. The announcement came. "James Thompson, please report to the front office." I looked up. He hesitated, then stood. People watched. I don't know why it made my heart race. Maybe because I knew something wasn't right. After class, I waited outside the office, heart pounding. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. When the door finally opened, James stepped out, eyes blazing. "What happened?" I asked. He didn't stop, just brushed past me. I followed. "James." Someone told the office I was being inappropriate with a student. I froze. "What?" Said I was touching a guy in class, making him uncomfortable, being a distraction. My stomach dropped. "You think it was Tyson?" "I know it was." We walked in silence. Then he stopped near the lockers. "You know what the worst part is?" I waited. No one asked me anything. They just said, "Be careful, we're watching you." I didn't know what to say, so I asked the only thing I could. "What do you want to do?" He looked at me, eyes tired, shoulders heavy. "I want to leave this place behind, and I want someone to come with me." My chest tightened. "James." He shook his head. "Not now. I'm not asking you now. I just needed you to know I don't want this to end here." I nodded slowly. "Me neither." He stepped forward. His fingers grazed mine, just for a second. Then he walked away, and I stood there, still, breathing, waiting, hoping that maybe this time silence wasn't the end. just the beginning of something worth hearing. There's this weird space after a storm. Not quite silence, not quite calm, just this thick, buzzing stillness that hangs over everything. That's what the week after James got called to the office felt like. He didn't switch back to sitting beside me in chemistry, but he started walking home with me again. We didn't talk about the Tyson thing. We didn't talk about what happened behind the gym. But every now and then, his hand would brush mine as we walked. Not holding, just touching, like a question he wasn't brave enough to ask. And I kept letting him ask, because the answer was always yes. Yes, I missed you. Yes, I still feel it. Yes, I want to know what this is, even if it scares me. One day after school, we sat on the steps outside his house, sharing a bag of peanut M&Ms like it was sacred. His mom's car was gone. His phone was face down. The sky was soft and gold and quiet. You ever think about what it'd be like if no one cared? He asked suddenly. About us? About any of it? I took a moment. Yeah, all the time. He nodded slowly. I envy people who just live. No second guessing. No hiding. Just are. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The silence between us had stopped being awkward. Now it just felt like space to breathe. Then he asked, "Your mom ever say anything about that note?" I stiffened. "You remember that? You told me once, when you were half asleep." I looked away. She never said a word. I said, just left it on my desk. Like trash. That sucks. I shrugged. I guess part of me preferred that to being screamed at. James nodded, then gently. And the other part? Still kind of wishes she asked me if I was okay. He didn't say anything, but he reached over and squeezed my hand. No questions, just a quiet kind of understanding. It was the first time he held it in broad daylight, and the first time I didn't flinch. I wish I could say that moment lasted, but small towns don't sleep. They just pretend. And the next person to find out wasn't a student. It was my cousin, Matt. He lived 2 streets over, went to a different school, but we grew up close. He was older, 2 years ahead, already graduated, worked at his dad's garage, and wore his baseball cap backward, like it was a part of his skull. He'd always been good to me, until he wasn't. I ran into him at the gas station on Friday night. I was grabbing snacks before heading to James's place. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Yo, I was starting to think you died." I smiled. "Just hiding." He leaned against the fridge door. "You still hang out with that kid? What's his name?" James. "Right, James." His tone shifted slightly, just enough to notice. I tried to brush it off. "Yeah, we're still friends." He raised an eyebrow. "Friends, huh?" I froze. He grinned. "Relax. I'm not your dad." I didn't say. I mean, I saw the way he looked at you that one time, at Aunt Lucy's barbecue. I swallowed. He didn't. "Dude." Matt laughed. "You don't gotta explain. It's not the 1950s. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but it didn't come. Instead, he opened a can of Red Bull, took a long sip, and said, "Look, I don't care who you like. Just don't let anyone make you feel like you gotta apologize for it." I blinked. "That's surprisingly chill of you." He smirked. "I'm not 12, Eli. And besides, I figure everyone's got their stuff. Yours just happens to be a little more interesting." He paid for his drink and started to walk out, then paused. "You're not alone, man. No matter what anyone says." Then he was gone, just like that. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, people weren't always going to react the way I feared. Sometimes they surprise you. Sometimes they see you and still stay. Later that night, I told James what happened. He was lying on his back, arms behind his head, staring at the ceiling like it had answers. When I finished, he just said, "Damn, Matt's cooler than I thought." I laughed. "Right." Then he turned to me. "What about your parents? Do they know?" I hesitated. "My mom probably suspects, but she's never asked. My dad's a ghost." James nodded like he understood too well. "I haven't told mine either. Are you going to? I don't know. He turned back to the ceiling. I want to, but sometimes I feel like if I say it out loud, it'll become something I can't take back. I watched him in the dim light. I think it already is. He looked over, and this time he did kiss me. Soft, careful, like asking permission with every second. And I kissed him back. Not because I was sure of what we were, but because I was sure of what we weren't anymore. We weren't hiding, at least not from each other. The next week brought its own challenges. Tyson was still giving us side glances in the hallway, but he didn't say anything. Maybe someone talked to him. Maybe he realized he was losing his grip on the narrative, or maybe he just got bored. Either way, the whispers faded. But something else started to rise. A weird kind of distance between James and me. Not dramatic, not cold, just quieter. He'd still text, still sit close, still meet my eyes. But I could feel the tension tightening again, like he was building up to something. Finally, one day after school, he said, I need to tell you something. I nodded. Okay, not here. He led me to the edge of town, the old footbridge near the lake. It was a place we used to race bikes past. Now it just felt like a memory waiting to be made. He stood at the railing, gripping it tight. I think I'm ready to tell them, he said. My parents. I blinked. Oh. He looked at me. I don't want to do it alone. My heart jumped. You want me to be there? No, he said softly. I want to tell them about us. The wind picked up. The water below shimmered like glass. Are you sure? I asked. No, he whispered, but I'm more scared of never trying. I walked over and stood beside him, and in that moment I realized something. Coming out isn't one moment. It's 1,000 tiny ones. It's the first look, the first touch, the first time you tell someone, even without words, that this is who I am, and the first time they don't walk away. James had always seemed fearless to me, even when he was shaking, even when his voice trembled. He carried himself like someone who'd get through it, like someone who knew he'd survive. But the night he came out to his parents, he wasn't fearless. He was scared, and he told me that before we even left his room. I feel like I'm about to jump off something, he said, pacing. Then I'll be down there waiting. I said, I promise. He looked at me, really looked, and nodded. I want to do it. I didn't say anything else. Just followed him down the stairs, heart pounding with every step. His parents were in the kitchen, his dad making tea, his mom reading something on her tablet. Normal, boring, safe, until James cleared his throat. They both looked up. Can we talk? His mom's face shifted instantly. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, he said. I just need to tell you something. And I need you to listen all the way through. His dad set the mug down. Okay. James took a breath, so deep it looked like he was holding it for years. I like guys. Just like that. No stuttering. No metaphor. No apology. Just truth. His mom blinked. His dad's brow twitched, not in anger, just in surprise. I don't want to hide anymore, James added, voice steady. And I want you to hear it from someone else. There was a beat of silence, so thick it made the walls feel closer. Then his mom said, We know. James froze. What? She smiled, gently, not mockingly. We've always kind of known. Honey, I was just waiting for you to be ready. His dad stepped forward, placing a hand on James's shoulder. You're still our kid. Nothing changes that. James's jaw trembled. He looked like he couldn't breathe, and then he turned toward me. This is Eli, he said, voice cracking. He's kind of important. His parents smiled at me. Nice to finally meet you, his mom said. I smiled back, but my throat was tight. I didn't expect to feel anything, but I did. Relief, longing, jealousy, all tangled together like wire. Because deep down, I knew my coming out wouldn't look like this. Not even close. Later that night, when we were alone again, James said, That went better than expected. I laughed under my breath. That was like every gay kid's dream scenario. He smiled. Guess we got lucky. Yeah. but the weight in my chest was still there. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I lied. You sure? I hesitated, then said, You remember when I said my dad's a ghost? Yeah. Well, he's not dead. He's just not here. James sat up. What happened? I don't know all of it. My mom never talks about it. He left when I was 13. No note, no warning. Just gone. James didn't say anything. I kept going. The weird part is, she acts like he still exists, like he's just out of town. Sometimes I see her texting someone late at night. She always hides it. That's strange. Yeah, and yesterday I found something. He leaned in. What? I swallowed. A letter with his name on it, postmarked last month, from a city 3 states away. James's eyes widened. You think she's still talking to him? I don't know, but something about it felt off, like she's hiding more than I realized. James exhaled slowly. Maybe it's time you asked her. Yeah, maybe, but I wasn't sure, because every time I got close to the truth, it felt like touching an old bruise I forgot was still sore. The next day at school, something was different. Not bad, just different. James didn't sit across the room anymore. He walked right to my seat, dropped into the desk beside me, and smiled. People saw. I knew they did, but no one said anything. Maybe they were tired of speculating. Or maybe they finally figured out we didn't care anymore. At lunch, Matt waved at us from across the courtyard. You guys are so obvious, he said with a grin. James laughed. Yeah, we're not really going for subtle anymore. Matt gave me a nod. You good? I nodded back. Yeah, I'm good. And for the first time, I meant it. Almost. That night, I sat at the kitchen table while my mom washed dishes. The envelope was in my pocket. I turned it over my hands so many times. The paper had started to soften. Hey, I said. She glanced at me. Yeah. Can I ask you something? She turned off the water, dried her hands, sat down across from me. I placed the envelope on the table. Her face didn't change. Not right away, but her fingers curled slightly. Where'd you find that? In the drawer, I said, with the old mail. She looked at it like it might bite her. Is he still talking to you? I asked. Silence. Mom. She looked up at me, tired, vulnerable, smaller than I ever remembered her being. I didn't know how to tell you, she said quietly. Tell me what? He's sick. The words hit harder than I expected. What do you mean? Cancer. Stage 3. He reached out a few months ago. Said he wanted to make things right. I stared at her. You were going to tell me? I was waiting for the right time. There's never a right time, I snapped. You of all people should know that. She flinched. I stood up, heart pounding. Why would you keep this from me? Because I didn't know if you wanted to see him again. I froze. He left us, she said, voice shaking. He abandoned us. And you stopped talking about him. You acted like he never existed. Because you made me feel like I had to forget. Silence. She looked away. I didn't know how to raise you alone. And then you started changing, pulling away. I thought maybe it was better if we just moved on. You thought wrong. I turned to leave, then stopped. I'm not a little kid anymore. I get to decide if I want answers. And then I walked out. James picked up on the second ring. I need air, I said. Where are you? Just meet me at the bridge. Be there in 10. We sat side by side, legs dangling off the edge, the lake dark beneath us. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. When I finished, he said, You know you don't owe him anything, right? I know. But if you want to see him, I'll go with you. I looked at him. You do that. He smiled. I'm not going anywhere. And that was when I realized something big. This story wasn't just about coming out. It was about coming home to the parts of yourself you buried, the parts that still needed healing. And maybe love wasn't just about kissing in the dark or sharing secrets. Maybe it was standing in the mess and saying, I see you. I still choose you. I thought the drive would be longer. It's weird how distance feels bigger when it's emotional. Three states sounded like another universe when my mom first said it. But 2 buses and a rental car later, I was pulling up to a faded brick building on a quiet side street in Montana. No house, just a second-story apartment with peeling white paint and a flickering porch light that buzzed like it didn't want to be on. James sat in the passenger seat beside me, hands clasped in his lap. "You okay?" he asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. He squeezed my hand. "I can wait out here." "No," I said quietly. "Come with me." He didn't argue, didn't hesitate, just stepped out of the car and followed me up the narrow stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When we reached the door, I froze. What if he didn't recognize me? What if he did? What if he opened the door and the past hit me so hard I couldn't breathe? James touched my elbow. "You don't have to knock." "I do," I whispered. So I did. 3 short taps. A pause. Then the door creaked open. And there he was. Older. Smaller than I remembered. Gray had streaked into his beard, and the lines around his eyes were deeper. But it was him. My father. He looked at me like I was a ghost. "Eli." I swallowed hard. "Yeah." His voice cracked. "God, you look..." He cut himself off, like he didn't earn the right to finish the sentence. Then his eyes flicked to James. I'm Tom," he said, awkwardly offering his hand. James shook it. "James." Tom stepped back. "Come in." The apartment was dim but clean. Smelled like old books and burnt coffee. A single photo frame sat on the shelf. A picture of me as a kid. I didn't remember it being taken. But there I was, gap-toothed and grinning, wearing a dinosaur shirt I thought was cool. "I didn't expect you," he said, gesturing for us to sit. I stayed standing. "I found your letter," I said. He nodded slowly. "I hoped you would." "Why now?" He hesitated. "Because I'm sick. And because I was a coward. And because I didn't know how to come back to the life I broke." His honesty stunned me. So did the softness in his voice. James took a quiet step back, giving us space. My father looked at me like every second hurt. "I left because I was scared," he said. "Of what?" He took a deep breath. "Of being seen. Of being me." I narrowed my eyes. "What are you talking about?" "I think you already know," he said, and for the first time I saw it. The same tension I'd lived with, the same weight in his shoulders, the same haunted look. He wasn't just sorry. He was familiar. I sat down slowly. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" He nodded. I knew I was different my whole life. But back then, being different meant dangerous things. "I married your mom because I thought that's what I had to do. I thought I could fix it." He paused, voice tight. "But I couldn't live a lie forever. So I ran." The room felt suddenly small. Too small to hold all the silence. "You left me," I said, "for years." "I know." "You didn't even write. Not once." I was ashamed. That word hit harder than I expected, because I'd carried that same shame. Quietly, daily, until James. I glanced over at him. He wasn't watching us. He was staring at the bookshelf, giving me space. But I felt his presence like an anchor. My father noticed a look between us. A small, tired smile formed at the edge of his mouth. "He makes you feel safe?" I nodded. He made me want to stop hiding. My dad's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry you had to go through it alone." "So am I." We sat in silence. Then I said, "I don't know what this means. For us. For anything." "It doesn't have to mean everything," he said. "Maybe just the start." I looked at the photo on the shelf again. That version of me, the little kid in the dinosaur shirt, didn't know any of this. But I think, if he did, he might have been a little less scared. We didn't stay long. Just long enough to sit in it, to let it settle. When we left, my dad hugged me. It wasn't warm or easy, but it was real, and real felt like a victory. On the drive back, James didn't say much, until we crossed the state line. Then he asked, "How you feel?" I stared out the window, like I opened a door I didn't know existed. He nodded. "Do you regret it?" "No." He smiled gently. "Me neither." Back at school, things had shifted again, not with the students. That noise had mostly faded. But with us, something about that trip had made James quieter. Not distant, just thoughtful. He started writing more. In a leather notebook he didn't show anyone. One afternoon, I finally asked, "What are you working on?" He shrugged. "Just thoughts. Stuff I can't say out loud." "Can I read it?" He smiled. "Maybe someday." There was something guarded in his eyes, like he was processing something I didn't know yet. And then, 3 days later, he said, "There's something I haven't told you." We were walking through the woods behind his house, leaves crunching under our feet. I stopped. "What is it?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "You remember how I said my brother Ryan's in college?" "Yeah." "Well, not exactly." I blinked. "What do you mean?" James took a long breath. He dropped out. "Over a year ago." "What?" "He got involved with some stuff. Drugs. Bad people. My parents didn't want anyone to know, so they told everyone he was still away at school. Even the neighbors." I stared at him. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I think he's back in town." My stomach dropped. "James." "I haven't seen him, but I got a message. No number. Just said, 'Tell your friend to stop digging into the past.'" My heart pounded. "What friend? I think they meant you." I froze, because suddenly the letter, the secret, my father, my mom's silence, it didn't feel random anymore. It felt connected. And somehow, James's brother was part of it. That message, "Tell your friend to stop digging into the past," stuck to my skin like sweat. I read it over and over on James's crack screen, trying to convince myself it was just some random prank. But my gut knew better. Why would Ryan threaten me? I asked. James didn't answer right away. He was staring at the tree line beyond his backyard, like it held something too painful to say out loud. "He's not the same person anymore," he finally said. "After he left college, he changed, got paranoid, secretive, angry." "Angry at what?" "At everyone. My parents, me, life. I don't know. And now he's back." "I haven't seen him," James said. "But that message, it came after you visited your dad. That can't be a coincidence." No, it couldn't. And the more I thought about it, the more I started seeing patterns I'd missed before. My mom's silence, my dad's fear, Ryan's disappearance, and now this message. Something was tying it all together, a thread running through both our families. And we were just starting to tug on it. That night, I dug through the shoebox under my bed where I kept old things. Photos, birthday cards, a few notes my dad had written before he left. There weren't many, but one stood out now. A card, plain and beige, for my 13th birthday. Inside, in messy handwriting, he'd written, "I know you feel things you can't explain yet. That's okay. Just promise me, don't bury them too deep. Burying things doesn't make them go away. It just makes them louder when they come back." Back then, I thought he was talking about feelings, about being emotional, or being too sensitive. Now I wondered if he meant more than that. James sat on the floor beside me, legs crossed, flipping through a family photo album I hadn't opened in years. Then he paused. "Wait," he said. "Who's this?" He held up a photo I barely remembered. It was a barbecue, maybe at the park. My dad stood next to a younger man I couldn't name. They were laughing. Hands close. Too close to be strangers. "Is that?" I squinted. Then my heart nearly stopped, because I'd seen that face before, in a frame in James's hallway. That wasn't just a family friend. That was James's uncle, his dad's younger brother. "What the hell?" James muttered. "Why is he in your family photo?" "I don't know," I said. "He's never been to my house. At least not that I remember." We stared at the photo, and suddenly, the questions got louder. How did my dad know James's uncle? Why had neither of our families ever mentioned it? And what was buried deep enough that someone, maybe Ryan, didn't want us digging? The next day, we skipped school. Neither of us said it out loud. But when James showed up at my door at 8:05 a.m. with 2 coffees and a set of car keys, I knew we were past pretending. We drove across town to his uncle's place, a mechanic shop now shuttered and rusting on the edge of the industrial district. James had only been there once, years ago. The place was abandoned, but mailbox still sat outside, duct taped shut. James opened it. Inside, a single crumpled envelope with no name. He pulled it out, opened it. Inside, a torn photograph of Ryan next to my dad, young, maybe early 20s, standing in front of a building I didn't recognize. On the back, scrawled in pen, they knew. They chose to disappear. I felt cold all over. James's hand shook. What is this? I whispered. I don't know, but it's real. Your brother, he must have found this. Or left it. The message was clear. Something happened. Something big. And both our families had worked hard to bury it. But why? And why now? After all these years, was it unraveling? That night, I confronted my mom again. I laid the photograph on the table. She didn't react at first. Just stared at it, like it might vanish if she blinked long enough. Mom, I said, nothing. Tell me the truth. How do you know James's family? She sat down slowly. Her hands trembled as she touched the photo. That was a long time ago, she said. I don't care how long ago it was. I want to know now. She looked up at me, eyes older than they'd ever looked. Your father was close with Daniel, James's uncle, before we met. I blinked. Close how? Her jaw tightened. He never said it out loud. Not back then. People didn't. But it was obvious. My chest tightened. And Ryan? They were friends. All of them. Your dad, Ryan, Daniel. Friends or more? I don't know, she said, but I could tell she was lying or protecting something. They used to meet in the woods behind the river trail. A little cabin. It wasn't much. Just a place to be themselves. But then, her voice cracked. Then it burned down. What? They said it was an accident. A heater. But after that, Daniel left town. Your father started drinking more. And Ryan, he changed. James and I exchanged a look. What do you mean change? He asked. He stopped smiling. Got cold. Distant. Like he was carrying something. She looked at the photo again. None of us were ever the same after that. Later, in James's driveway, we sat in the car in stunned silence. So, he said, let me get this straight. Our families were connected. Your dad and my uncle were probably something. My brother and your dad used to meet at a cabin. Then it burned down. And no one ever talked about it. Yep, I said. Welcome to our shared trauma. He laughed, but wasn't happy. It was disbelief. Exhaustion. What do we do now? I leaned back in my seat. I think we find that cabin. The next day after school, we went to the edge of town. The river trail was mostly overgrown now. No one used it anymore, but the path was still there if you knew where to look. We followed it deep into the woods. Eventually, we found it, or what was left. Charred beams, stone foundation, ash and moss, long abandoned. It looked like a memory someone tried to erase. James knelt beside what was once a wall. It's real, he whispered. They were here. I stood in the center of the ruin, trying to imagine what this place once was. A safe haven? A secret? A beginning or an end? Then James called, Eli? I turned. He was holding something small, scorched but still legible. A metal pendant, with the initials T plus D carved into the back. My father. His uncle. I took it from his hand, my chest pounding. This was theirs. James stepped closer. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, we weren't just two kids falling in love. We were the continuation of something, of someone, a connection that lived before us, that tried to survive. And maybe now, we were the ones meant to finish the story they couldn't. He reached for my hand. I'm not letting this die again, he said. Neither was I. Ryan didn't show up right away, but we knew he would. James had left the pendant, the one we found in the ruins of the cabin, on the porch of his family's house, right under the broken light. Attached to it was a note in James's careful, unshaking handwriting. We found the truth. If you want to talk instead of run, meet me at the lake. You know which one. The lake was quiet the next morning. Overcast, breezy. We sat on the dock, feet dangling over the still water, waiting. James was tense, jaw tight, hands clenched. You sure you want to do this? I asked. He nodded. I need to. I didn't press. I just stayed with him. And when we finally heard footsteps crunching to the dry grass behind us, James didn't flinch. He stood. Ryan looked older, not in the way time does, but like something had lived too long in his bones. Dark hoodie, shaggy hair, sleepless eyes. Still, his resemblance to James was uncanny. Same sharp jaw, same haunted eyes. You found it, Ryan said. James crossed his arms. Yeah, we did. Ryan looked at me. You're Eli. I nodded slowly. He sighed. Of course you are. James stepped forward. What happened, Ryan? His brother didn't answer right away. Then he sat down on the edge of the dock, not beside us, but close enough. I was 16 when I found out, Ryan said quietly. About Uncle Danny. About your friend's dad. My boyfriend's dad, James corrected. Ryan's lip twitched, not in anger, more like pain. Right. Yeah, him. He paused. They were in love, you know. James and I exchanged a glance. Ryan kept staring at the water. I followed Danny once. Thought he was cheating on his girlfriend. Turns out he was just meeting Tom, Eli's dad, at that cabin. Same spot, same time, every week. And you told someone? I asked. He shook his head. No, I didn't have to. Then what happened? There was this night. Big storm coming in. I saw a bunch of guys heading into the woods. Flashlights. One of them had a gas can. My blood turned cold. You watched them? Ryan looked at me sharply. I didn't know what they were doing. I thought it was a prank. James's voice was shaking. Did you warn them? I tried, Ryan whispered. I ran to the cabin, but I was too late. The fire started so fast. The whole back wall lit up like paper. He went quiet. When it was over, he continued, Danny disappeared. Left town the next day. And Tom, your dad, just vanished into his own life. Married a woman, had a kid. Pretended none of it ever happened. James's eyes were glassy. Why didn't you tell anyone? Ryan looked at him. Would you have believed me? A scared teenager? And by then, Dad had already made it clear how he felt about guys like that. So I buried it. He rubbed his face. But I couldn't stay buried, too. He looked at us again. When I saw you two at the store that day, I knew, and I knew what could happen if people like those men were still out there. I finally asked, Are they? Ryan hesitated. Some of them. Still in town. Still playing innocent. One even goes to church with Mom. The ground under us seemed to tilt. Why'd you warn us then? James asked. That text about stopping the digging? Because the closer you get, the more dangerous it becomes, Ryan said. You think those men would hesitate to shut you up now? I exhaled. This isn't just about secrets, I said. It's about covering up a crime. Ryan nodded, but no one ever got blamed. No one even knew it was deliberate. Until now. Later that night, James and I sat in his room, the silence between us thicker than usual. He still should have told someone, James muttered. He was scared, I said. So were we, and we still did something. I looked at him. You think this is who we are now? Just digging through ashes? I think, James said, this started way before us. But maybe we're the only ones who care enough to finish it. There was a long pause. Then I whispered, I got a letter. He looked at me. From your dad. I nodded. I pulled it from my backpack. The envelope was already torn open. Inside, 2 pages, both handwritten. Careful, clear, like he'd rewritten them in his head 1,000 times before putting ink to paper. I handed them to James. He read in silence, then looked up at me. He loved him, he said softly. I nodded. Your dad loved my uncle. And suddenly it wasn't some mystery from decades ago. It was real, and it had scars. The next day, I visited my mom again. I didn't bring the letter. I didn't need to. I want to ask you one more thing, I said, standing in the kitchen. She was pouring coffee. She didn't look at me. Was it an accident? She froze. The fire, I said, was it really just a heater? Silence. Then, slowly, she set the mug down. No, she said. My breath caught. I thought maybe you'd never find out, she whispered. That maybe we could leave it buried. But I guess I should have known. You always notice the things people don't say. Why didn't you tell me? Because I want to protect you. From what? From the same hate that made them burn that place down. I stared at her. You knew. She nodded. Not at first, but eventually yes. And you stayed quiet. I stayed alive, she said, and kept you safe. I turned to leave, too angry to cry. But before I could open the door, she said, I never stopped loving your father, but I knew part of him would always belong to someone else. I didn't want that to break you. I paused, then left. Some truths don't need answers. Just air. That night, James held me tighter than usual. We didn't talk about the fire, or Ryan, or the cabin. We just lay there, side by side, hands linked between us. Like maybe if we held tight enough, the past couldn't drown us. His voice broke the silence. I think we should tell people. I turned to him. Tell them what? The truth about what happened. I hesitated. And if they don't believe us, then we keep telling it anyway. I stared into his eyes, stormy, unwavering, and I realized the mystery might have started with them, but the healing could start with us. We didn't do a press conference or anything dramatic, just one post. James wrote it, honest, simple, sharp like a needle. My uncle and my boyfriend's dad were in love once. Their place was burned down. Everyone called it an accident. It wasn't. We found the truth, and we're not hiding it anymore. There was a photo attached, the burnt pendant we'd found at the cabin, initials still visible, T+D. He posted it at 6:13 p.m. on a Thursday. By 6:45, the comments started rolling in. By 7 o'clock, the phone rang, his mom frantic, asking if it was a joke. By 7:22, Matt texted me, Bro, you just broke this town in half. Friday at school felt like walking through glass. Some people avoided us. Some looked through us. Others nodded, almost like they were waiting for someone else to say it first. James handled it better than I did. He stood taller, looked braver, but I knew his stomach was a storm. I knew because mine was, too. At lunch, we sat alone. Matt joined us 5 minutes later. He dropped his tray and said, That was bold. James just shrugged. Felt like time. Matt nodded slowly. You're going to get some heat for it. James smiled. Let them try. I admire that about him. How even in fear, he could bluff his way through a fire. Me? I was more like smoke. Quiet. Always hiding. Until now. That night, I got a call. Unknown number. I almost let it ring out. But something made me answer. A deep gravel voice. You don't know what you're messing with, kid. I didn't respond. You're not the first to stir up ghosts. But you might be the last. Click. No name. No number to trace. Just silence. I didn't tell James right away. Not because I wanted to protect him, but because I needed to figure out if I was strong enough to keep going. Because that voice wasn't just threatening. It was personal. 2 days later, a man showed up at my door. Mid-60s. Worn jacket. Deep lines in his face. He introduced himself as Dean Harper. Used to be a sheriff's deputy back in the late 90s. I heard what you posted, he said. Thought you might want to see this. He handed me a thin manila envelope. Inside, a black and white photograph of the cabin. Before the fire. 2 men standing outside it. One was unmistakably my dad. The other, James's uncle. But that wasn't the shocking part. It was what was spray-painted across the door in giant red letters. Sinners. I looked up at him. heart racing. This was taken the night before the fire, he said. It was reported, ignored. A week later, I was let go. Why are you telling me this now? Because I watched this town bury crime, Dean said, and I've regretted it every day since. I nodded slowly. You want to help us tell the truth? I want to live with myself before I die. James was waiting for me at the lake when I showed him the photo. His hands shook. They knew, he said. They all knew. Dean said the paint was gone by the time the fire happened. Someone cleaned it up. Quietly. No report. No news. Just gone. James stared at the lake. Who covers up hate like that? I didn't answer. Because the real question was, who gains from silence? James turned to me, jaw clenched. We're not done. No, I said, we're just getting started. The next week, we set up a meeting with the school's journalism club. One of the seniors, Zoe, offered to help. She was quiet, observant, and sharp as hell. You don't want to blow this all in one post, she told us. You want people to follow the trail. So we let her write the next piece, using Dean's testimony, the photo, and our story. She titled it, The Fire That Tried to Erase Two Men. It hit harder than the first post, because it wasn't just personal now. It was documented, named, real, and the town couldn't look away anymore. James's parents took it better than expected. His mom was teary-eyed, said she always suspected something about her brother, but never had proof. His dad? Quiet, a long look in his son's direction. Then, I'm proud of you, and I wish I'd been that brave at your age. They hugged, the kind of hug that made you wonder if something just healed that had been cracked for years. My mom didn't say much, but I noticed she started reading the articles, clipping them. One night, I found her staring at the old photo of her and my dad. She didn't say a word, just touched the frame like it still mattered. I guess it did. Even if it was a lie, part of it was still love. The town's reaction wasn't all kind. Someone threw eggs at James's mailbox. A brick hit the windshield of Dean Harper's truck. But for every anonymous threat, there were comments, emails, people we didn't even know sharing their stories. One guy wrote, My uncle was gay, died before I was born. No one ever talked about him. Thanks for reminding me he mattered. Another girl DM'd me. I didn't know this town had kids like you. Maybe I'll stop hiding too. I showed James. He smiled teary. That, he said, is why we're doing this. And then came the final blow. A box, left on James's porch, wrapped in old newspaper. No note, just a name scrawled in marker, for Yell-Eye. Inside, a journal. Weather-worn, leather-bound, and on the first page, in looping script, Property of Tom Bailey, 1999. My dad's journal. The rest of it, full of entries, letters, descriptions of the cabin, of Daniel, of their plans to move away, to start fresh somewhere no one knew them. And then, we saw the red paint today. I don't think it's safe anymore. Danny wants to report it, but we both know no one will listen. So we'll leave, soon, before it gets worse. That entry was dated 2 days before the fire. I closed the book, hands trembling. He knew. They both knew. And they tried to escape it. But they couldn't. Maybe we still could. Maybe we had. There was a name at the bottom of the last page in my dad's journal, written in rushed, almost shaking handwriting. If something happens, it was Dean Weller. I saw him with the gas can. The words felt like they screamed off the page. Dean Weller, not the deputy who'd helped us. Not Ryan. Not my dad. It was someone else. A man who still lived 3 streets away from the school, who ran the hardware store, who coached the youth baseball league. A man who still got polite hellos at gas stations. A man who burned down a cabin and nearly erased 2 lives. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did James. We lay in his room, lights off, listening to the crickets outside the window and the sound of our own breathing. I always knew this town had rotted its roots, he said. I didn't think it'd still be this fresh. We didn't speak for a long time after that, but when he reached for my hand in the dark, I held on like it was the only solid thing left. because in that moment it was... The next morning, we gave the journal to Dean Harper. He read the last entry twice, lips tightening, then nodded. I always suspected Weller had something to do with it, he said. But I never had proof. I'm guessing your dad kept this hidden. I swallowed. Do you think we should go public? Dean stared out the window of the diner, where the town slowly moved through its morning rituals like nothing had ever changed. Then he looked at us. I think it's time. The article went live that night. Zoe helped again. She called it the name behind the fire, the truth the town didn't want to hear. It quoted the journal directly. It included old reports, witness statements. Dean Harper even agreed to attach his name this time. It spread like wildfire, ironic considering what it exposed. And suddenly, the whole town was awake. Some angry, some terrified, some relieved, but all of them watching. 2 days later, Dean Weller was arrested. The new sheriff confirmed there was enough evidence to open a full investigation. They searched his property, found old files, burned remnants of clothing, photos with names crossed out. It wasn't just a hate crime. It was a cover-up, one the town had participated in by looking the other way for decades. No one could ignore it now, and they didn't. James's mom cried when she read the article, not because of Weller, but because of what her brother went through and how long she hadn't known. I thought he left because he didn't care, she said, but now I know he was trying to survive. James hugged her, and for the first time, there was no shame in his eyes, only pride. My mom said nothing at first. Just read the article in silence. Then she turned to me and said, "You're stronger than both of us ever were." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Sometimes silence isn't about hiding. It's about healing. The town changed after that. Not overnight, but cracks started to show in the mask it had worn for too long. A few teachers who'd once ignored me in the hall now smiled. Someone painted a rainbow flag on the skate park wall. No one covered it up. And on the wall outside the post office, someone spray-painted 2 letters, T+D, just like the pendant. I stood there for 10 minutes. Didn't cry, didn't smile, just felt it. A story finally being told. A week later, I got a call from my dad. He sounded tired, but lighter. "I saw the news," he said. "You okay?" "I think I'm finally going to be." We didn't talk long, but when I hung up, I felt something shift. Not an ending, but maybe peace. One evening, James took me back to the lake. The sky was that soft pink-orange that only happens in quiet moments. We sat on the dock again, feet swinging above the water. "Do you think they ever sat like this?" he asked. "Our dads." He nodded. "I hope so," I said. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small wooden box. My heart skipped. "James." He opened it. Inside, a necklace, simple black cord, and hanging from it, the original pendant we found at the cabin, cleaned, preserved, the initials still carved deep, T+D. "I want you to have it," he said. "No," I said, shaking my head. "You should." He cut me off. "I'm giving it to you because I want this story to keep going. Through us." I stared at him. His hair was glowing gold in the sunset, his eyes calm. I took the necklace. Put it on. It felt warm against my chest, like a heart still beating. Then he kissed me. Not rushed, not hungry, just true. And in that moment, I understood what my father had once felt. Not just love, but freedom. They held a memorial at the lake. The same one where James kissed me. The same one where we found the truth. The same one where it all began to feel real. It wasn't official, not sponsored by the town or anything. Just a group of people who cared. Zoe organized most of it. Ryan came, too, standing off to the side, quiet but present. James's parents were there. Even my mom. Even Matt, who didn't say much but hugged me longer than I expected. We set up 2 wooden benches, one with my dad's name carved into it. Tom Bailey. The other, Daniel Weller. Not a grave, not a statue, but something real. Something that said you were here. I sat on the bench with James's hand in mine, staring out at the still water. People shared stories. Some about Daniel, some about Tom, some from people we'd never even met. He taught me how to fix a carburetor. One guy said, probably in his late 40s, never asked for anything in return, just wanted me to know something useful. I used to see them, an older woman whispered, at that cabin. Never said anything, but I knew. I always knew. I wish I'd spoken up, someone else said. I think we all do. By the end, no one was really crying anymore. They were remembering, and that felt like a kind of justice. James leaned over and kissed my cheek. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, for the first time, maybe I am. He smiled. They'd be proud. I think so, too. We sat there, not needing words, just letting the air hold us, until we saw him. A man, early 40s maybe, tall, dressed in gray, standing near the trees, just far enough to be out of crowd, but close enough to watch. There was something familiar in his face. I stood. James followed my gaze. Who is that? I don't know, but I was already moving. He didn't walk away when I approached, just stood there, hands in his coat pockets, eyes on the lake. When I got close, he turned, and I stopped breathing, because his eyes, the shape, the color, they were mine. And his voice, when he spoke, cracked just like mine had the first time I told James how I felt. You're Eli. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I said. Who are you? He smiled, but it was heavy. My name's Owen. I blinked. I don't know that name. You wouldn't, he said. Your father didn't either. Not really. What? He looked at the benches, then back at me. I'm Daniel's son. The ground tilted. My mouth went dry. James stepped beside me, silent but alert. Owen looked at me gently. I was born after the fire. My mom never told me much, just that my dad had gone missing. He took out a photo, small, aged. It was the same one we'd found in the cabin ruins. My father and Daniel, arms slung over each other, smiling. I found this in a box she left when she passed, he said. Didn't mean much to me then, until I saw your post. He looked at me, eyes shining. I flew here to know the truth. I couldn't speak. I just nodded slowly. James finally asked, What are you going to do? Owen looked at the benches again. I think I'm going to sit with my father, for the first time in my life. We left him there. James didn't speak until we were in the car. Then he whispered, Can you believe it? Daniel had a kid. I nodded, and now that kid knows the truth. We both sat with that for a moment. Then I asked, Do you ever feel like we're just characters in someone else's story? James laughed softly. Yeah, but I think we rewrote the ending. That night he came to my house. It wasn't planned. He just showed up, hair messy from the wind, jacket half-zipped, eyes full of something I hadn't seen before. He pulled me into a hug like he hadn't seen me in weeks. What happened? I asked. He didn't let go. I've been thinking, he whispered, about what comes next. I leaned back to look at him. Okay. He smiled. I got accepted to a school in Oregon, art program, full ride. My heart stopped. That's amazing, I said, and I meant it, even if my stomach dropped a little. He hesitated. I wasn't going to tell you yet. I didn't want to make this harder. I swallowed. When do you leave? August. 3 months. 3 months of summer, and fireflies, and lake water, and us. Then what? I nodded. You should go. He touched my cheek. Come with me? I stared at him. What? Come with me. Start over. New town. New place. Together. I have college here. I know, but you said you didn't even like it. I don't. I admitted. But what if we just chose something for ourselves this time? It sounded insane, and perfect, and terrifying. You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. Just think about it. I nodded, but I already knew. This story wasn't just about our dads anymore. It was about what we'd build from what they left behind. And maybe, for once, we could choose where it went. Summer moved fast after that. 1 week turned into 2. Then June folded into July. The air stayed warm, the lake stayed still, and James and I stayed close. Closer than ever before. Some nights we laid under the stars in silence. Other nights we stayed up talking until 3 a.m. about the fire, the town, the past we couldn't rewrite, and the future we maybe could. And always in the back of my mind was a decision I hadn't made yet. Oregon, a new life with him, or staying here, in the same town that once tried to erase everything we now knew to be true. The final push came from someone I didn't expect. It arrived in the mail. No return address. Just a small, weathered envelope with my name written in my dad's handwriting. Inside, a single folded letter, dated exactly 1 year before he died. My hand shook as I opened it. Eli, if you're reading this, I guess there are some things I never got to say in person. I'm sorry for that. I wish I'd been braver when it mattered, not just for me, but for you. You probably found pieces of my past by now. Daniel, the cabin, the silence that grew around it. I wish I could tell you it was all just youth and heartbreak, but it wasn't. It was love. Real, honest, terrifying love. We didn't get a happy ending. Not then, but maybe you will. If there's someone who makes you feel seen, held, known, don't run. Don't hide. Don't wait until it's too late like I did. You're stronger than I ever was. Be free with it. Love, Dad. I reread it 3 times. Cried hard at the 3rd. Then I walked to James's house without even texting first. He opened the door, hair messy, t-shirt wrinkled, like he'd just woken up. I held up the letter. He took it gently, read it silently. When he looked back up, his eyes were glassy. You okay? He asked. I will be, I said. Then I smiled. One of those smiles that only happens when your heart knows something your brain finally agrees with. I'm coming with you. He blinked. You what? I already put in my transfer request. It's done. James looked like he forgot how to breathe. Then he just threw his arms around me and whispered in my ear, we're going to be okay. And I believe him. We spent the rest of summer preparing, packing, planning, letting go. James visited the lake one last time with his mom, left a sketch he'd drawn of Daniel in a sealed envelope on the memorial bench. Ryan left town. No one knew where, but he texted James something simple. You did what I couldn't. Keep going. As for Owen, Daniel's son, he stayed in town for a little while, helped restore the cabin site into a quiet memorial space. Just a trail sign, a bench, and a plaque. No more secrets. Just truth. Moving day was a blur. Boxes, dust, goodbyes. Matt gave me a book of bad poetry and hugged me like a brother. My mom cried, then said, I never had the courage to start over, but I'm glad you do. She hugged James too, called him family. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a new beginning. It was finally stepping out from the shadows of the past. Together, we left at sunrise. Me and James's old Corolla, windows down, music too loud, the pendant with T+D hanging from the rear view. Somewhere on the highway, I looked over at him, wind in his hair, light in his eyes. You nervous? I asked. He grinned, terrified. Me too. We both laughed, but neither of us looked back. It's been months now. Oregon feels nothing like home used to, and yet it feels like ours. We share an apartment with too many plants, a coffee maker that wheezes, and a fridge that hums at 2 a.m. James paints in the corner studio space. I journal at the window. We cook badly, love loudly, argue about stupid things like whose turn it is to buy soap. And every night, I fall asleep to the sound of his breathing. Steady, real here. Sometimes we still talk about the past. The fire, the cabin, the things our dads couldn't say out loud. But mostly we talk about what's next, where we'll go, who we'll become, what kind of story we'll leave behind. Because this isn't the end. It never really was. It's just the part where 2 people, who should have never found each other, finally stop running and decide to live out loud, in the light, together, always.